Caitlin Clark's grueling year felt less like a season of basketball and more like a storm she was forced to walk through alone. What began with promise slowly unraveled into one of the toughest stretches any young star has endured in years. Fans saw the highlight plays. They saw the triple-doubles, the record-breaking crowds, the historic jersey sales, and the global attention that followed her every move. But what they didn't see was the weight she carried behind the scenes as injury after injury chipped away at her momentum, her rhythm, and her spirit. It was a year that seemed determined to test not just her body, but her resolve. And every setback only deepened the questions surrounding her health, her future, and the decisions being made around her. From the moment analysts began saying she should seek second opinions, it was clear her situation was more complicated than fans initially realized. She had played her entire life without missing time, always pushing through fatigue, pressure, and expectations. But professional basketball hits differently, especially in a league where physicality reigns and the schedule leaves little room for recovery. When the Indiana Fever confirmed she was seeing outside medical specialists in New York, it was the first public signal that both she and her team knew something deeper needed to be addressed. The fans wondered if the organization was being overly cautious or if they had finally realized that the player who carried their entire identity could no longer be treated like a machine. Clark had barely gotten a chance to regain her footing after her first injury when the second one arrived, and then the third shut her season down completely. The triple-double in May had felt like the beginning of something special, something unstoppable. But 7 days later the quad injury hit, and the cracks began to show. When she returned on June 14th and dropped 32 points while ending the Liberty's undefeated run, it felt like classic Caitlin magic. Yet behind the brilliance was a player whose body was sending warning signals she had never learned to listen to. Each shot, each sprint, each pivot had become a battle between adrenaline and pain, and the balance finally tipped in late June when her groin gave out again. To fans, it was just another injury update. To Caitlin, it was a nightmare forming in slow motion. The Fever had fought their way into relevance on the power of her presence, and yet the moment she stepped off the floor, the entire rhythm shifted. She returned again in July, this time with a stubborn determination that couldn't hide the limp in her movements or the strain in her face. She played because she wanted to help her team, because she wanted to keep the season alive, because she had never learned the art of stepping back. But basketball isn't forgiving, and on July 15th it finally demanded more from her than her body could give. When her groin tightened and she collapsed late in the game, the silence from the bench said everything. Her year was over. The recovery process that followed was physically draining, emotionally exhausting, and hauntingly lonely. She spent hours rehabbing and repeating the same motions over and over, trying to rebuild strength in a body that had been pushed to the breaking point. She wanted to return. She wanted to save what was left of the season. She wanted to be there for the fans who had supported her through every high and low. But the doctors made it clear that rushing back would be reckless, irresponsible, and possibly career-altering. Saying she would not return was the hardest choice she had ever made. It was the first time in her life where her heart said play but her body said no. Then came Bella. Losing a pet is something every family understands on a deeply human level. But for Caitlin, Bella was more than that. The dog had been with her through the long nights of homework, the early mornings of practice, the heartbreak of tournament losses, and the historic wins that turned her into a national icon. Bella had been the constant in a life filled with pressure and attention most people could never imagine. When she posted that message on November 29th, fans realized that all the injuries, all the disappointment, and all the fear she had endured that year paled in comparison to this personal heartbreak. The shoes she had created earlier that season became an accidental farewell gift to a companion she didn't know she would lose. It was a moment that connected her not just to fans of the sport, but to anyone who has ever lost something irreplaceable. And yet even as grief consumed her, the world around her moved forward. Her team faced a roster overhaul, free agency uncertainty, expansion complications, and a shifting league landscape. Suddenly the Fever's future had as many questions as Caitlin's health. Only 3 players were guaranteed to return in 2026, and the organization faced the daunting task of rebuilding from scratch while the league prepared for 2 new expansion teams. Clark wasn't just recovering from injury. She was watching the foundation of her team transform beneath her feet. The dream of returning stronger in 2026 was mixed with the anxiety of not knowing who she would be playing alongside. Would Kelsey Mitchell stay? Would the Fever find enough veteran support? Would the league's new salary structures finally give players the stability they deserved? Would expansion weaken the roster or bring new opportunities? These were questions that no one, not even the team's leadership, could answer yet. And behind all this uncertainty, Caitlin was preparing to face a year without Bella. A year where she would step into the arena carrying memories instead of a loyal companion waiting at home. A year where she would have to rebuild not just her strength, but her confidence. A year where she would reclaim the court not as the unstoppable rookie, but as a star who had been tested deeply and personally. This is the kind of season that breaks players. But it can also be the kind of season that shapes legends. Caitlin Clark isn't defined by the perfect games or the viral highlights or the nightly sold-out arenas. She is defined by the resilience she showed when everything around her fell apart. The injuries, the uncertainty, the grief, and the pressure all tried to pull her under. Instead, she stayed focused. She stayed committed. She stayed ready for the day she can finally return to the floor and remind the world why they fell in love with her game in the first place. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Caitlin Clark will come back stronger than ever in 2026? Or will the injuries and emotional weight of this year create new challenges she'll need time to overcome? And how do you see the fever rebuilding around her with so many roster questions still unanswered? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you want more deep dive coverage on stories like this, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update.